Hello, good evening, good day, everybody, and welcome to the Geopolitics episode of the Ask Abhijit show. I hope you are all doing fantastic. Let us see who all is there on the live chat. Let me greet some of you before we begin with the questions. So, who do we have? We have Vamshi Reddy from Twitter or X, really now from Reva, Madhya Pradesh. IPK underscore 1S, Namaskaram, Chetan Aradhya, RJ, Ayush Singh, Ashtavakra, Shubh Deepavali, Happy Diwali, Shubh Diwali to everybody, all of you and your families and your loved ones. We have Beneath, we have Vladimir Putin, Jai Shri Ramji, Wise Idiot, Boxer, Apurva Anupama. Good evening, Shivasai, Sharan, Chetan Aradhya, Animish, Namaste, Shamit Bringi Dev, hello and happy Diwali. Animals for Laugh from Mumbai. Avinash, Beneath Bonjour. Geopolitical Bay here from Indore. Good evening, sir. Sharan, Shivam Shukla, Tanmay Deshpande, really now, Mr. Jam Hare Krishna. Apurva, once again, Jay Desai, Tathagat Karan, Daksh, Jai Shri Ram, Ram Ram, Komal, hello, Anandu MS, Shivam Shukla, R. PPL from Washington. Well, good to have you. Good morning. Chintan, hello. Rahul G from Kolhapur. Good to have you, sir. Thank you. Dev is here. Jai Jagannath from Odisha. Sharan from Bangalore. Kiran Jha. Ram Ram. Aniruddha Parakala. Uh, Anahita. Good evening. Happy Diwali. Ananta Subramaniam. Prachit Agarwal. Radhe. Game Changer. Rishi Moria. Arjun, Priyanshi Sood, hello, Om. Venkat Murli K. Boxer is here from Pune. RJ gives a lot of hearts. Well, a lot of hearts back to you. Rishikesh Dasgupta, hello. Pratar Dana, namaste. Doordarshan. Nice. Lakhe Plays, hello. Channel PSJH, hi. Samyak Space, Ashtavakra once again. Bruce Wayne, Shubh Choti Diwali. Yes, same to you, sir. Manisha Cardoso, namaste. One of two, happy Diwali. RJ, lots of hearts. Credit Ends is here. Mary Kane, happy Diwali. Thank you so much, ma'am. I hope, happy Diwali to you as well. Thank you. ¿Cómo estás? Says Akash Patel. Well, all good. Thank you. Genil, event countdown, injured soccer player. Jasdeep Saran is here from Chicago. Jayant Madika. Hello. Vamshi once again, Ayush Deepika, hello. Abhishek Srivastav, Vinay Rai, Saurav Shukla, Kiran Jha. Okay, let me stop greeting you all, otherwise I can do that all day. Let's get going with some questions. What questions do we have? Dave is a new member. Thank you so much, Dave. Good to have you. I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much. Okay, this drummer 1989 says, is Trump really administrating, or is he just there to increase his net worth through cryptocurrency? I'm sure he is administering and doing his job as the president of the US, but he also seems to be kind of double tasking, multitasking. So he has, first of all, made sure that he is not directly in charge of his business empire. He has created entities and handed over the control on paper, legally, officially, to various family members, his sons, and so on. So he's not directly, uh, administering his business empire and controlling the business empire. But you will see that wherever he goes, for example, he recently, a few months ago, went to Oman or the Middle East, and there was a lot of business dealing as well that happened as part of his visit, maybe on the sidelines, but still, it was there. And the government of which country was it? Oman, was it Qatar? One of these countries, they gave him a gigantic 747 jet, I think it was. Yeah, Boeing 747 or something like that, something similar, very large jet. That's clearly a kickback or a bribe. I mean, definitely a bribe or inducement of some kind, but well, he takes it. So that's his style. But he certainly is doing his job as the president of the United States. No question about that. He is doing what is required of him, and his objective is to be the biggest, baddest, greatest ever president of the US, at least this side of Abraham Lincoln, if not all of all time. That's his great ambition, and he is he wants to end as many wars as possible. That's one achievement. That's one set of achievements he wants to have. So maybe he's asked various nations to start wars so that he can end them. Perhaps maybe the Pakistanis are doing that. Maybe that's why they have been provoking Afghanistan. Maybe they will provoke us as well. Let's see. So that's what he is doing. Shamit Bringi Dev says, will India-China relations become more positive over the next 10 years, given that President Trump has slapped both nations with high trade tariffs? It is certainly possible that for the short to medium term, India-China relations will get better to some extent. I am very doubtful that the core issues will be resolved. The core issue in the relationship between the two nations is the undemarcated India-Tibet border. So I don't expect that to be resolved. The Chinese don't want to resolve that. I'll be very surprised and very pleasantly surprised if that happens, but I think it's unlikely. For that will happen. Beyond that, I believe that there will be various means of cooperation, or at least working together and setting aside the core issue temporarily for a while, for maybe 5-10 years, perhaps maximum 20 years. So I expect that the relationship will become more positive, as long as Trump is around, and as long as this current approach of the United States continues, or maybe gets worse. So Trump is just the current manifestation of the United States and its new approach towards the world. And see, Trump is going to be around for another 3.5 or so years, and this is his second term. So clearly, if everything goes as per the way things are, then there will be a new president by 2020, whatever it is. What 2028? Yeah, 28 to 29, I suppose, 29. And then if things change, then India-China relationship may once again diverge or whatever. So it all depends on the attitude of the US. When you have a very powerful external enemy that is targeting both of you, it kind of makes sense to at least for some time set aside the bigger differences and try and cooperate in various other ways. Bhaskar Khaitwal says, any other characters in world history like a certain Sergeant Major and the magnificent Sri Nehru? I'm not sure, sir. Today we discuss geopolitics, sir. Let's discuss geopolitics. Okay, I cannot mix and match every time. When I do history sessions, people ask me geopolitics questions. When I'm doing geopolitics, people ask me history questions. I would say that, look, Sergeant Major Gandhi and Sri Nehru, are there other figures like that? There are other figures like that, I would imagine. People who have played certain roles. But let's discuss geopolitics today. Bhaskar says, alignment with Gandhar today is good. Well, now, geopolitics question from Bhaskar ji once again. Okay. Alignment with Gandhar today is good because it furthers our interest. But why do some say that Bharat has civilizational connect with Afghanistan? What kind, in spite of what happened at Hindu Kush Range and other stuff the past 1,000 years? See, the reason people say that we have a civilizational connect with Gandhar, with Afghanistan, is because historically Gandhar was part of our civilizational territory. It was part of Bharatvarsh. It was part of Jambu Dweep. And Gandhar has been integrated and part of our civilization since at least the Mahabharat times, as we know very well, right? The mother of the Kauravas, who's known as Gandhari, she was from Gandhar. She was, you could say, an Afghan. From today's perspective, she was Afghan. So was her brother, Shakuni. Pretty evil guy, wasn't he? Pretty Machiavellian guy. Not Chanakyan guy, but Machiavellian guy. And we have historical records that do indicate that Gandhar was even part of our civilization about 1500 or so years ago. You have Xuanzang coming in from China, and the moment he sets foot in Gandhar, he says, thank God I'm finally in India after all these years of trudging across the mountain ranges and deserts and barely surviving. I'm finally in India. The moment he reaches what is now Afghanistan, he writes that, right? So it was part of our civilization until about 1000 AD. And the people are connected to us, are related to us, not just culturally, but also genetically. The Pashtuns are an extension of the larger northern Indian population, right? So that's why we do have this connection. But today, culturally, civilizationally, there's nothing in common between us and them. Yeah, if you see the body language of Pashtuns and Afghans, it's more Indian than Iranian, clearly, or more Indian than Central Asian. They all speak some kind of Hindi, which they call Urdu or whatever, right? So it is clearly there. we understand each other very well because we are essentially the same people, even if it's been 1,000 years since they've been converted. Uh, and So, because of all these reasons, it is clear that we have, or we had, a civilizational connect with Afghanistan. And if you see, so that's in the past. But today we still have those connections. We still understand each other very well. We still, if you have a look, if you have an Afghan person walking around in India, people won't even look twice at that person, right? They look like us. They behave like us. We understand each other very well, and so on. So there is a civilizational connect because of this. What happened in the Hindu Kush range and so on, that was Turkic. The Turks from Central Asia, where they had conquered various parts of India, and they carried away maybe several million Indian women and children, mostly as slaves, to the slave markets of Bukhara and Samarkand. Yes, and that obviously had to be done through the Khyber Pass and the Upari Siena Mountains, which are now called the Hindu Kush Mountains. Upari Siena means those mountains where even eagles can't fly higher. Upari Siena. The Urdu word or Persian word Shaheen comes from the Sanskrit word Sien, which means eagle. So, Upari Siena means mountains that are higher than where eagles fly. That's how tall these mountains were and are, I suppose. So, that was the original word or term or name for this mountain range. But because so many Hindus died there while crossing those mountains, while being carried across those mountains as slaves, that's why they are now called the Hindu Kush Mountains, the killer of the Hindus. I suppose if you dig in the snows there, you will find frozen bodies from that time, 1,000 years ago, in the past 1,000 years. Okay, Bhaskar once again says, what is the significance of Mr. Henry Kissinger? Why is he an important figure in history, geopolitics, and diplomacy? What was he instrumental in? You see this book here, this big fat white book here? That is Diplomacy by Henry Kissinger. He was a global statesman. See, what's his story in brief? He was Jewish. He was born in Germany, and he migrated to the United States, and he went on to become the Secretary of State of the United States, which is the same position as our foreign minister, Minister of External Affairs. So in the US, it's called the Secretary of State, the head of the State Department, which is the Minister of External Affairs, so to say. And he held this position during the presidency of Shri Nixon, right? The Nixon-Kissinger era. And Kissinger was a very effective Secretary of State, a very Machiavellian person, no question about that. He had a pretty, you could say, nasty approach towards India. He is the person who kind of engineered the US-China détente, right? The US-China rapprochement. Kissinger and Nixon go to Beijing and they meet with Mao and Zhou Enlai and so on, and that brings about this thaw between the two nations. So Kissinger was instrumental in so much of what happened in the 20th century, and a lot of the major changes that happened. Even after Nixon was impeached and who was it? Carter comes to power, I suppose. Carter was brought in. Even after that, Kissinger kind of continued to play the role of an elder statesman who understood the world very, very well. And, his advice was always sought, maybe behind closed doors or whatever, that sort of thing. And and he was kind of a scholar. He wrote a lot of books. He wrote a book about China. He wrote a book about leadership. He wrote a book about diplomacy. He's got a lot of writings, very interesting writings. Okay, very, very well written books. You can learn a lot from those things, and so on. So and he knew essentially every world leader that existed or that lived during that period in time. And he only tragically passed away, I don't know, a year or so ago. So that's why he was a central figure in the geopolitics of his times, and geopolitics eventually becomes history. So that's the deal. Okay, Bhaskar, once again, Bhaskar has a lot of questions. Well, let us take the questions. Why is the Fergana Valley region in Central Asia considered to be a breeding ground for terrorism? What does Russia do to make sure Gehra Rajya or the deep state does not grow snakes in Russia's backyard for mischievous purposes? Okay, we're gonna go and check out the Fergana Valley. Give me a second while I pull up the map. We must pull up the map and we shall look at the Fergana Valley. What is this place? Fergana Valley. One second, one second, one second. Where's the map? All right, here we go. Here we go. Let's put that on the screen. Uzbekistan, we are talking about. Uzbekistan. Here we are. So we go to Central Asia and we go north of India and west of India. And we have this country called Uzbekistan. Now, if you go to Uzbekistan, you have all these nations, cities, and so on called, yeah. So, where is Andijan? Let's zoom in a little bit more. Andijan is here, Fargana. So, there is this town called Fargana, and there is this other town called Andijan. Andijan is famous for two things. First of all, it was the birthplace of Zahiruddin, also known as Babar, the first king of the Mughal Empire, of the Mughal kingdom. So he was born here in Andijan. If you go to the satellite image, it make a little more sense. So that's the first thing that Andijan is famous for being the birthplace of the Mughal king Babur. And the second thing Andijan is famous for is the Andijan massacre, which happened about 20-ish years ago. And we'll not go into that. So this region, Fergana, well, it's a pretty, you could say, conservative place, where you have this conservative Islamic kind of a traditional approach to life. That's one thing. But if the thing is that today Tajikistan seems to be more of an epicenter of terrorism and all kinds of nasty stuff. I mean, recently you had some terrorist attacks in Russia, which emanated essentially out of Tajikistan, not quite from Fergana. And Tajikistan is not a Turkic nation; it's an Indo-Iranian nation, right? It's right next door to India. Actually, if you look, Indians don't even realize that. Anyhow, so that's the deal about Fergana. This region is called the Fergana Valley, and historically, it's been the place where the Mughal kingdom originated, and it's a pretty conservative place, kind of, you could say, similar to Dagestan or Chechnya, which is like pretty far away. But I personally don't consider Fergana to be that much of a breeding ground for terrorism compared to a place like Pakistan. You don't have the situation in Fergana that you have in Pakistan, where you have tremendous amounts of funding which is poured into terrorism. You have terrorism, schools, colleges, universities, IITs, or whatever, institutes of terrorism. You don't have all of that in Fergana. You have that fundamentalist mindset to some extent, but you don't have the situation that you have in Pakistan. Now, coming to the other question, what does Russia do to make sure the deep state doesn't grow snakes in Russia's backyard? Well, the Russians have a pretty powerful, pretty competent intelligence agency, right, which keeps an eye on what's happening, and it's certainly does coordinate with these countries in Central Asia. All the stance, the Russians have significantly robust cooperation with these nations and coordination with these nations. And wherever you may have snakes emerging, those snakes, their heads are crushed quietly. That's how it is done. It all happens behind the scenes, cloak and dagger stuff, where everything goes. Okay. Bhaskar once again says, what was the Yalta Conference? Are we anticipating such an event coming soon, in coming 30, 50 years' time? Why is the US government scared of own army's body bags? I don't know what that means, but the Yalta Conference threw up very interesting images. Okay, let's do that. Let's take a look at that. So you have the four great leaders, okay, of that time: Roosevelt, Stalin, and so on. Okay, Yalta Conference. Okay, let's take a look at some images. So here we have three of the biggies. You have Roosevelt, you have Stalin, you have Churchill. Very famous images come out of here. Yalta. Yeah. So yeah, it threw up these very interesting, very famous, very iconic images that came essentially at the end of the Second World War. And so, what was the Yalta Conference essentially? So it was, look, by early 1945, the writing on the wall was clear that the Allies were going to win. The Axis, which is Hitler and Mussolini and the Japanese Empire, they were going to lose. It was very clear. So the three nations, see, that the time France was not quite it had been under German occupation. It had been liberated, but it did not really have a government. Charles de Gaulle was in exile for most of the war. He was in the West, in the UK. So he wasn't there in the conference. So you have the three big guys who were able to resist the Germans: the United States, the UK, and Russia. The UK was never occupied, so it stayed independent. The US, anyway, was never under any danger, and Russia did most of the fighting, most of the dying, and most of the winning. So these three then come together, and they kind of essentially decide what the world order is going to be like once the war eventually ends, whenever it does. Right? So that was what essentially the Yalta Conference was all about. Are we anticipating such events in the coming 30 to 50 years' time? That sort of an event happens only when a big war is ending. We don't want big wars, first of all. Hopefully there will be no big war, in which case no such event will happen. I'm not sure of army body bags and all. I'm not sure what you're asking there. So yeah. Ritik Pawar says, what are the ways to weaken the US empire? What are the ways to weaken the US empire? I don't think anyone's really in a position to weaken the US empire. What you can do is grow your own strength, right? And resist the bullying and whatever coercion is attempted. So the point is, the way to, you can't really weaken the US empire as such, but you can make its relative strength less strong by becoming more powerful yourself. That's what you can do. And that's what the US wants to prevent. It wants to prevent nations like China, Russia, India from becoming more powerful. And that's what all the current action is all about, economic and diplomatic and other action. Yeah, tariffs and sanctions and semiconductor restrictions and AI and all that. That's what it's all about. So you don't really weaken the US empire. You grow your own strength. You become more powerful. You grow your economy. You grow your military might, your naval might. Ballistic missiles, other kinds of missiles, technology, AI, space, all of that. And that's how you relatively become less weak compared to the US. That's what you can do. Bhaskar Kayatwal says, Happy Diwali to you and your family, sir. Thank you very much. I wish the same to everyone who's watching and to you as well, Bhaskar ji. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you. Endless gratitude and fortunate to learn and raise our standards. Love you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Looking forward to meet you again in JD Summit. Okay, we did. And greetings from Moscow. Oh, yes, you're from Moscow. Okay. I remember meeting you. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate that. And I look forward to meeting you at JD. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bhaskar says, if civilizations rise and fall in a cycle, can this rule not apply to America? If they develop AGI or if Elon Musk takes them to Mars for colonizing, and that might make the US dominant for the next 1,000 years? It's a possibility. Civilizations do rise and fall in a cycle. That's what history has taught us. Every civilization that came eventually fell. We are still around, but we may also fall. Right now, we are on very shaky ground. We are losing touch with our civilizational roots in India. So we are the weakest we have ever been civilizationally right now. Right now, we are pretty deracinated. We are no longer in touch with our native languages, with our civilizational language. We no longer really practice our culture. We are more and more enamored with Western ways. We believe most of our people have this massive inferiority complex, which is ever increasing, and they believe the Western ways are the best, are better. So lots of people are abandoning their culture and civilization. There is this massive industrial scale, demographic re-engineering that's happening in front of the government's eyes, and nothing is being done about it. So we are super weak right now. We may also fall as a civilization. In 100 years, maybe all Indians will be practicing a different religion. It's very possible. So anyway, coming back to what you're asking, can this rule not apply to the US? Of course it can apply to the US. If they develop AGI or Elon Musk takes them to Mars and for starting colonies there, that could make the US dominant for a long time. That's entirely possible. But eventually, see, this applies more to empires than to civilizations. Civilizations sometimes take much longer to rise and fall. But empires typically, from what I have seen, they last about 300, 250 to 350 years. You have some exceptions, but generally, on average, the typical empire lasts about, if it's a good empire, powerful empire, maybe 250 to 350 years. So the US was born in what, 1776. It became an empire, let's say, in the 19th century. So it's been around as an empire for about 200 to 50 years, maybe 100 years more, perhaps. Even with AGI or whatever, if they get things right, they may be around for another 200 years. Even 1,000 years is possible, but eventually everything, ends. So it applies to everybody, including the US. Bhaskar has become a new member. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much. Really now says, sir, मैंने 2611 के बारे में पढ़ा है और निश्चित ही सत्य सार्वजनिक रूप से नहीं कहा जा सकता, पर अब मैं a country in Middle East के प्रति indifferent रहने के बजाय उनके बारे में भयभीत और क्रोधित महसूस करने लगी हूँ. Okay. So what the lady is saying is that I've read about the 2611 and what happened there, and it is becoming more clear, according to her, that that the truth hasn't really come out in the public domain, and she is really concerned and angry with a certain country in the Middle East, increasingly so. Well, yeah, it's possible that, look, even when it comes to 9/11, if you watch what Tucker Carlson is putting out on YouTube these days, he's claiming that there's been a massive cover up, and the truth has never been put out in front of the people of the United States. When it comes to 1963, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, once again, that's a massive cover up. So it's entirely possible that maybe there could be some kind of cover up in 2611. And maybe some countries may be involved to a larger or lesser extent than what we have imagined, whichever they are. It's possible. It's possible. And so maybe new facts will eventually someday come to light. It's possible. Okay. Okay. Dib Yayan says, the major religions in sub-Saharan Africa today is Christianity and Islam, where they brought there by invaders and wiped out the indigenous religions. Look, today we're going to discuss geopolitics, but to answer your question in brief, they were, of course, brought in there by invaders and colonizers and occupiers and barbarians, genocidal barbarians. And these outsiders did wipe out the indigenous religions, right? By imposing their religions, they can control the people more. They can control the society in a better way, in a stronger way, by doing that, they can extract more resources, right? So that's the overall objective. So yes, indeed, that's the case. That has been the case. Dib Yayan says, can the US put all its debt in crypto and then devalue it? I think that seems to be the plan right now. That's what the Russians are saying, and that does seem to be a pretty likely plan of the US to, put all their debt into crypto, then devalue the crypto, and the debt evaporates. They certainly can do it. I think that seems to be the direction in which things are going. Makes sense to do that. Varun Bajaj says, you say the US would war if key nations, China, Russia, India, drop the USD. Sovereignty, legal/moral justification contradicts US champion independence. There's no legal moral justification for this. You don't need legal moral justification to remain number one. I am number one. I'm the most powerful nation. And I'm the most powerful because so-and-so conditions have been created by me. If somebody wants to undo those conditions, I don't care whether there are no legal justifications or moral justifications. I am the strongest, and that's the only justification I need to do what is required. Why do I conquer? Because I can. I don't need a legal or moral justification. Please understand, the world doesn't operate on the basis of law or legality or morality. I think that's something I've been harping on about since the year 2001. Since 2001, I've been saying this, There is no morality in geopolitics. Laws don't matter. Laws are made for the weak. Laws are made by the strong and applied to the imposed on the weak. The strong nations don't follow any laws. There is no morality in geopolitics. That's what Vishnugupta Chanakya taught you all, but you people don't listen. If the US champions human rights and democracy, does it really walk the talk? Don't they support dictatorships? Don't they support the Pakistani military? Does the Pakistani military respect human rights, democracy? It's a terrorist regime. The US supports that. The US funded and financed Pakistani terrorism for decades against us. You see any US championed independence, morality, legality, human rights, democracy there? Come on, please. Let's grow up a little bit, please, all of us. Rohan Suneja says, which country actually has the best education system? This has nothing to do with geopolitics, sir. I'm not sure who does. I think when it comes to science and technology, the US may still be the best. Tanmay says, no kings protest democracy or deep state ploy. It's just to keep up the semblance of democracy and freedom of expression in the US. The Democrats most likely are behind this, or maybe they're allied people, but yeah, there's no deep state ploy in that. I assure you of that. Game Changer says, does the brain work in a deterministic way? Please tell. What does this have to do with geopolitics? We don't know how the brain works. We don't know. That's a big mystery. Okay. Ananta Subramaniam says, how to make India a superpower like America? Number 2, how to make India industrial power. 3, what can we learn from geopolitics that we can apply from in life? First, number 1, let us forget the term superpower. Let us delete the term superpower from our vocabulary. That will be better for Indians. Right now, we are a third world country and we're talking about superpower. We want to be superpower, we want to be Vishwaguru. We should delete those terms from our vocabulary. Let us be a decently competent power first. We have so many issues and we want to be superpower. Because we believe that words make us a superpower, right? We are a nation of slogans, not action. So forget about the superpower thing. Forget about it. You can't fly when you don't even know how to run. Okay? So forget that. How to make India an industrial power? By building up industries, by bringing in merit into India, by ending the goddamned reservations, by cleaning up the education system, right? By ensuring that the best talent doesn't want to leave India the moment they get a chance. And that's how you make India an industrial power. By cutting all the red tape, by making it easier to do business, far easier to do business in India, by ending the goddamned corruption. These are the things we can do to make India an industrial power. Unless we do these things, we are destined to remain mediocre. Okay. What can we learn from geopolitics that we can apply in life? Everything in geopolitics can be applied in life. Everything. Right? Everything. Look, like I said just a while ago, laws and rules are made by the powerful, they apply to the weak. The powerful people don't really play by the rules and laws they've made. That applies in real life too. And there are so many elements of geopolitics. Like, for example, nations work together and become friends, so to say, or allies when their interests align or converge. And they are destined to be adversaries if their interests diverge. This applies in real life also. And diplomacy, all these things are also apply equally in real life. You just need to understand the parallels, right? So everything in geopolitics does apply to real life. Please understand that. You need to understand how to transpose it from the realm of geopolitics to the realm of daily life, maybe interpersonal life, maybe office life, maybe career. All of that is very much applicable. Sports, corporate life, everything. Rishi Maurya 20. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I was wondering what's the question. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your support. Thank you. Nikhil Bansali says, your channel's reach is dropping due to current approach. Not any whatever. Continuous live streams hurt reach. Go back to focus video essays like before. I can reach well. Will help reach out. Thank you very much for the advice. I am aware of the situation, and I'm aware of why my channel's reach is capped at 950,000. Okay, uh, you can have your theories. I have the data. I have the statistics. I know when it started. When did my channel get capped? It got capped March, April 2024, just before the elections, general elections. Okay, so I know what's happening. I'm not one to complain. I'm going to continue. I know exactly based on the data, but I really appreciate your concern and your advice. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Jasdeep Saran, thank you very much. Thank you for your support. Really appreciate that. Jayant Madika, thank you very much. Thank you once again. Appreciate it. MK says, was India a satellite state of the USSR and not sovereign? Was India not sovereign? India was indeed sovereign, but India was very much in the USSR's camp. India was, you could say, a junior partner of the USSR. India was not non-sovereign. We had not lost, let's say, see, there are what are the different kinds of sovereignty that you have? Let's take the example of the nations that make up the European Union. Let's take the example of, let's say, Germany. To understand sovereignty, Germany lacks territorial sovereignty because its borders are open. It's part of the EU. Secondly, it is under foreign occupation. You have US troops permanently stationed in Germany. So Germany doesn't have territorial sovereignty. Germany doesn't have economic sovereignty because it has to use the euro. It has given up its old currency, the Deutschmark. It's kind of a rebranded Deutschmark, but it doesn't control its currency. Thirdly, it doesn't have legislative sovereignty because the legislation is done from Brussels, right? And so on. So these are the different ways of defining sovereignty, and India had all those. India definitely was sovereign, but India was kind of a junior partner of the USSR. Nikhil Bansali says, why has the best had better technology R&D when compared to India, China, etc.? The West. Okay, is it cultural? Is it economic? Is it geopolitical? We are not close to cutting edge. It's about standards. It's about standards. It's not cultural. It's not. You could say standards are part of your culture. See, India. Let's take India versus the US, for example. Two very extreme examples. India, a case of ridiculously low standards. The US, in the 1950s, 60s, a case of ridiculously high standards. So, the US, it's a nation that is based on cutthroat competition. It's a purely capitalistic nation. If you are excellent, you will do excellent and you will become a millionaire, now a billionaire, trillionaire, whatever. If you are mediocre, if you are not competent, you're gonna struggle to put food on your family's table, even if you work 3 jobs in a day, right? So that's the kind of nation the US is. Cutthroat competition, purely based on merit for most people, right? And if you are good enough, you are guaranteed to rise. The society will take care of you. And they want to maximize their chances of success and victory. It's an empire, and they are aligned as an empire, and the education system is entirely geared towards research and development and science and technology. And that's why you had this incredible excellence that the US demonstrated in the 1950s and 1960s. It all started slowly declining after 71, right? So it's because they had the highest standards. The leaders, they had excellent leaders, all the way from top to bottom, at least until the 1960s, right? So that's why the US was excellent, and their entire education system, especially in science and technology, is entirely focused on research, on actual research and development, not on theory, blah 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 bullshit. Not that. Actual research and development. In India, you had the entirely opposite situation. 1947, there was a transfer of power from one set of crooks to another. The system never changed. The British system still continues today. Nothing has changed. That system was designed to exploit the country. And only the top leadership has changed after 47. So the system of exploitation continued. It still exploits people. It's a rent-seeking system. It doesn't seek any progress. Look at your universities. They are designed. Who are the stakeholders in an education system? It's supposed to be the students and the country, right? But the way the education system functions, the stakeholders are your professors, your teachers, your staff, your peons, your clerks. Ask yourself one question: if a student misbehaves, what happens? Tremendous punishment. If a clerk misbehaves, if a teacher misbehaves, what happens? Nothing happens. Who's the real stakeholder? Who's being protected? So the system is supposed to do one thing, it does the opposite. Horrific low standards all across the entire board in India. It's not culture. Our culture is very different. Our culture came back from 10,000 years ago. It was a culture of excellence. Now we are losing the culture, right? We are being deracinated. It is not the culture, it's the system. The system is designed to destroy the country. Do you understand? The system is designed to keep the country mediocre and destroy it, to erode it from within. We are not close to cutting edge because the system is designed to keep us as far from cutting edge as possible. When you just don't do any research and development, what cutting edge will you do? When the mark of excellence is how many mediocre papers you publish in some third-rate journal, what excellence will you have? Would you like to see an example of a journal, of a paper that is published? What was it? I had put this out yesterday. What was it called? Slavery. Yeah, Slavery in Ancient India, Parmod Kumar. Okay, let's take a look at this paper. I mean, not this one. I think it's over here. I mean, look at the quality of this paper. Good God. This paper is written in such an abysmal manner. I mean, is this how you write a research paper? Utter mediocrity. If you want to be a Hindu phobe, at least do that with a certain minimum quality, right? So this is the deal in India. A nation of incredibly mediocre standards because the system has imposed this mediocrity on us. That's the reason. Okay, pretty long answer. Sharon says, hi, sir. Thank you for all the knowledge over the years. Thank you very much, sir. Been a follower since 2020. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Also, your French and Italian accents are spot on. Well, thank you very much once again. Thank you, sir. Achintya Anand is a new member. Thank you very much. Very much so. Thank you. Project Smiling Buddha says, happy Diwali, sir, and everyone. Happy Diwali to you as well and everyone as well. Thank you very much. Pratar Dana says, Indians and West make fun of China for reverse engineering Western technology. Do we not realize that the West has done the same from Germany and earlier India? That's what people don't realize. It's not a mark of inferiority if you are able to successfully reverse engineer technology. You need to have a certain amount of competence to be able to even reverse engineer something. You are absolutely correct. What was Operation Paperclip? Operation Paperclip, which was conducted by the United States. It was the large-scale importation of rocket engineers and scientists from Nazi Germany, who were spared any punishment as long as they worked for the United States. And that is how the United States created its space program. They had no space program of their own. They brought in plane loads of German engineers who had worked on the cruise missiles and ballistic missiles for Nazi Germany. See, Nazi Germany was the originator of the cruise missile and the ballistic missile, the V1, V2, etc. rockets. And those, whichever rockets survived, whichever missiles survived, those were shipped to the US. Those were disassembled and reverse engineered. And the German scientists and rocket engineers, etc., they started building more advanced versions iteratively of those missiles. And that's how the US, space program was developed. And the head of the US space program, the head of NASA, was Werner von Braun, German Nazi, right? And the same goes for the jet engine and so on, which also was pioneered by Nazi scientists. So that's how you do it. That's how you do it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. The Chinese have reverse engineered everything they could get their hands on, and I really, admire what they have achieved. Why couldn't we reverse engineer anything? Because we didn't want to. We didn't care to do that. Our leaders wanted allegedly kickbacks. for buying weapons from other countries, allegedly. And that's why that once again, the system is the problem. The system is designed to keep India mediocre. When you have an academic system which doesn't care about research and development, R&D, then how will you reverse engineer anything? When your top professors are just eminent scientists who have done nothing actually in life, and who can't reverse engineer anything, who don't really know how to do actually something with their own hands, all they know is how to give lectures, then what will you achieve? When your education system is geared in such a way, it's constructed in such a way that the most mediocre rise to the top and the talent is destroyed, what are you going to have? That's the deal. That's the problem with India. And that problem exists today. It is even worse today. That's the problem. Nikhil Bansali says, how do people in regions rise to power? How do people generally rise to power? Well, if it's a political system, if you rise to political power, you have to be politically astute. And you typically have to rise to power in a political party somewhere. And so you have to play the games of power. You have to contribute. You have to be very valuable to the party. If you're valuable, then they will obviously fast track your promotion to higher and higher positions. And then at the highest position, if you want to get elected, you have to be charismatic, you have to be competent, you have to be able to deliver on your promises and so on. And that's how it's done. When you have a different system, maybe like in the past, then either you have to be born in a royal family, primogeniture, the firstborn son or the most competent son, or maybe you have to do a regime change through, like Chandragupta did, by overthrowing the existing dynasty and that sort of thing. So, different ways of rising to power. Chat DSP says, what is Trump up to? His king post literally shitting over the US people is a shame. Millions protesting. Do you think things will get worse in the US and the world? Well, Trump is here to stay for the next 3.5 years. So yeah, I saw his post. So in this post that he put out on whatever, Truth Social or whatever it is. So it's an AI generated post in which there's some no kings protest that's happening on the streets of some city in the US. And Trump goes up in a fighter plane, in a fighter jet. He's wearing a crown. Obviously, he sees himself as a king, as an emperor or something. And from his aircraft, he drops shit tons of shit on the people. Trump seems to have a shit fetish or something. I don't know. He seems to have a great fondness for excrement. Trump. Pretty distasteful post. Completely unbecoming of a world leader, of the president of a powerful nation, or any civilized person. But it is what it is. That's what you have in the US today. You have Donald Trump. Look, Trump does have some redeeming qualities, and overall maybe he's gonna make things good for his make life better for his country. Possibly he's going to ensure that his nation remains the most powerful nation, maybe becomes even more powerful, and so on. Yeah, clearly. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you do. See, I've always said this. I think it was in 19 no, it was not 19, it was in 2018 or 2019 that I gave us a talk called The Turkish Origins of India's Partition or something like that, in which I spoke about Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. And I said that Mustafa Kemal Ataturk was one of the greatest warriors, generals of all time, and a fantastic leader of Turkey. Essentially the founder of modern Turkey. He saved Turkey from annihilation, and he was the dictator for several years until he died of liver cirrhosis because of over drinking. And I said that a leader should be judged only based on what he contributes to his nation. His personal life doesn't matter. You should not be based on your personal life. So Ataturk was a womanizer. He was a drunkard. He was not a nice person at all as in person. But he saved his country, and he did so much good for his country. So my point was that you should judge a leader only based on their public life and what they have contributed to their country, or if they have committed any harm to their country. Their personal life, if they're a nasty person doesn't matter. You may be a womanizer, you may be a drunkard, doesn't matter. He was still, in my book, a great leader. right? So it doesn't really matter. So Trump may have his eccentricities and all, but as long as he makes the US more powerful, I would say he's still a great leader for his country. That's how it goes. Okay. Okay. Vamshi Kalam says IAF's TVR 69.4 overtook PLAF 63.8, IAF number 3, China number 4. I don't care. All these rankings and all, look, anybody can put out rankings. I don't know what TVR means, but I'm expecting you putting out some ranking of these, the Indian Air Force, the Pakistan People's Liberation Army Air Force, and so on. I would say the Chinese Air Force is far more powerful than Indian Air Force. I don't know who came up with these rankings, and what's the basis of how they have calculated this. How did they calculate? I'm not sure. I would say the Chinese Air Force is more powerful than the Indian Air Force. Look at the rate at which they're churning out aircraft. Look at how many aircraft they have in total. Yeah, they are they're stuck in various places, and that's why they have to deploy aircraft in various parts of their territory, of their country, and they can't focus them all against India. But still, the Chinese Air Force is definitely more powerful than the Indian Air Force. They produce their own fighter planes in house. We import fighter planes. We have the Tejas, which we are still iteratively developing. Fantastic that we have the Tejas, but we don't have our own jet engines. We have so many issues. What's the numbers that we have? We have a huge shortfall of squadrons, like they say. I would not consider the Indian Air Force to be in the same league as the Chinese Air Force. We are definitely better than the Pakistani Air Force and whatever else. And the great saving grace that we have is we have frightfully good missiles. So that is an advantage we have. But overall, fighter planes and all, I would say the Chinese Air Force is better than the Indian Air Force. I'm not being anti-national here. I'm being completely transparent, honest, and pragmatic and practical over here. Bhaskar says TikTok uses Oracle service. Why? What service should I use for hosting my app? I don't want to host on US servers. Also, your views on Geo BlackRock venture. I haven't looked into the Geo BlackRock venture, so I would not be able to comment about that. TikTok uses Oracle servers. Why? Because Oracle servers are the best in the world. If you want to, if you need to host your apps, and you need a backend, you need servers, you should go for the best and most reliable servers that are available to you. Right? That's what you should do. Is there any Indian company that offers you world-class servers, a world-class backend service? If that doesn't exist, I personally am not aware of any. I am aware of various US solutions. There's Supabase, which is like a beginner's thing, but you can scale it up, I suppose, to millions of users. And you obviously can use Oracle servers. My advice to you would be use the best service that your money can buy, the best quality, the best uptime, the best response times, the best SLAs, whatever. That's what you should do. Okay? That's what I would say. And why does TikTok use that? Because it's the best that's available. Oracle is the best service, I suppose, that's available. Prachit Agarwal becomes a new member. Thank you very much, Prachit. Appreciate it very much. Thank you. Aries Manticore is a member for 20 months. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. We will keep on raising our standards. Please do. Please do. It will definitely have an effect on the nation if we all do whatever we can in a personal capacity to become better versions of ourselves. Right? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Project Smiling Buddha says, why do some Indians believe that some foreign E2E encrypted app is safe? Why so naive? The West has been snooping on all private messages. Just Google Snapchat Indian chat Spain plane Taliban. Just one example. Let us Google it. Okay, Snapchat Indian chat Spain plane Taliban. What is this? A British Indian student Aditya Verma is on trial in Spain for a Snapchat message he sent while in an airport before a flight to Spain. In a message to friends, he jokingly wrote, "On my way to blow up the plane, I'm a member of the Taliban." And this message was detected by UK authorities. It triggered the Spanish Air Force to scramble fighter jets to escort his flight. This was in 2022. And the Spanish scrambled to F-18 fighter jets to flank the aircraft. It was made to land in Menorca, where this very brilliant person was arrested. And he said it was a joke. I'm sure it was a joke, because Indians, the worst they will do is joke. They will never do such a thing. So it's clear. Look, if you imagine that your messages in your data is private, you are super deluded. You're super delusional. Nothing is private. If you are a person of interest, they're gonna snoop on you. Whatever messages you're sending through your favorite messaging application, they'll be snooped up. They'll be accessible to whoever is snooping, especially foreign governments, possibly even your own government, whoever you are. So Indians are super naive, right? Indians are super naive, unfortunately. What can I say? They believe that encryption ensures that, they believe that laws actually matter. Why are we so naive? Because of it all goes back to the education system. We are not taught how to think critically. We imagine that we imagine, I don't know what. It's because Indians are not taught how to think critically, and that's why they are so easy to fool. That's the whole thing. That's the root cause of everything. No ability to think critically. They believe what people in authority tell them. Indians are incredibly deferential to authority figures. Incredibly deferential. If you're a person in authority, if you're an eminent person, if you are especially a person with white skin, Indians will like, oh, sir, yes, sir, we believe you. So that's the problem. Very naive people. I don't know what to do to change this. I don't know. Aman says, is world government a possibility? What are your thoughts on universal basic income? I think a world government, if it happens, will happen through the back door. It will happen. How can you have a world government that happens through the back door? A world government becoming a reality through the back door means that the world will continue to imagine that you have governments everywhere which are independent. Like the people of Japan imagine that Japan is an independent country. Like the people of Germany imagine Germany is independent. Like the people of Korea imagine that they have democracy, they have a government, and the government decides what happens in the country. Right? Most people in these countries believe that they genuinely are a democracy and an independent sovereign nation. So imagine the same situation happens to the rest of the world, to the entirety of the world, and the majority of the people continue to believe that, because we have elections, I go and vote every 4 years, I go and vote every 5 years. You have governments that come and go. You have leaders that are sometimes in power and sometimes they are voted out of power. Look, we have a functioning democracy. We have a military. We have sovereignty. But what if all your leaders, all your entire system is just a show? It's just a sham, like you have in Japan, like you have in Korea, South Korea, right? Like you have in the EU nations. I think now it's becoming apparent to the people of the EU that it's a sham, but still the majority still believe, I suppose. So what if you install a system in every country that's like a plug and play system? Ideally a democratic system where you have voting. Okay? So you have this electoral cycle that happens. Your prime minister or president comes and goes, is there for a few years, then somebody else comes in. You have various political parties. But what if everybody actually serves some foreign master and they're all just playing a game? Their pockets are being lined. What about that? Then you have a world government by proxy and nobody ever realizes this. So it is certainly a possibility. I think it is more likely to happen through the back door than overtly world government, which will scare everybody. But what if you keep people living in la la land? Get people addicted to scrolling reels all day. Yeah. Get people influenced by various influencers who put across the right messages. Yeah, so it's very much a possibility. So to some extent, world government has happened in Europe, EU, in the West. Maybe it will spread out to other countries, possibly. What are my thoughts on UBI, universal basic income? I think it's a very bad idea. It will make people complacent. It will destroy human productivity, creativity, all of that. If you are guaranteed an income, then why will you work? Unless you are driven from within, which is like 0.1% of the people. 99.9% of the people, if you give them a decent income and you give them entertainment, you give them a PS5 or Xbox, you give them a phone with cheap internet, you give them home delivery food, that's it. What else do you want? Life is done, life is good. Yeah, it's like the Matrix. I think it's a very bad idea. uh, so you have the concept of what social security in some countries, right? If you are jobless and all, the government will give you some money until you get a job and so on. I think social security to some extent makes sense, but giving everybody UBI, I think it's a bad idea. Animesh says the hegemonic empire will surmount more pressure in and around India in the times to come. How does India weather the storm and still sustainably grow? Yes, the empire will certainly apply more pressure on India. That is obviously in the empire's interests, right? They would like to have a bipolar world order. One is the US-led, Western-led world order, and the second is the Russia-China world order, in case the two nations continue to stay together. And they want the entire world to make a choice. You are either here or there. They don't want a multipolar world order, which is kind of a mess. They want to go back to the 20th century kind of situation when you had where you had a bipolar world. And India is one of the major pieces on the chessboard, and they would like to have India on their side. So if the current government is being problematic and insisting on India's sovereignty, then maybe they would like to install somebody else in the top job in Delhi who will be more pliable. So pressure will increase on India in a variety of ways. So how do you install a different person in power? By making the current person in power look incompetent, weak, helpless, and so on, by creating all kinds of pressure points and executing those. So how does India weather the storm and still sustainably grow? We will have to look for other allies. India seems to have calculated that we need to put all our eggs in the Western basket, or much of our eggs in the Western baskets. Our foreign policy to some extent has kind of been reactive for a while. Not completely reactive, of course. We are taking initiative, but you can see that still see that the initiatives we are taking in the foreign policy realm are kind of reactions to what's happening to us. Reactions. So we need to be more proactive. We need to have our own clear agenda. We need to have our aims and objectives for 2050 or whatever, and we need to take care of the economy. If we can't, if we are being, we need to have various trade agreements, free trade agreements, etc., with as many nations and economic groups economic blocks as possible. We just did that with the UK recently. We have something going on with the Australians as well. It doesn't look like there's going to be something happening anytime soon with the Americans, but because the Americans want, well, complete access to the Indian economy without any tariffs, which obviously will be a disaster if we accept that. So maybe we should become a consumption-driven economy, for which we will need way more reforms than we have right now. So we're going to have to find solutions to the existing problems. We're going to have to align, or let's say partner with as many nations and economic groups as possible. And we will need to become more agile diplomatically and otherwise as well. So all that needs to happen. Biju Sai says, in geopolitical terms, how much influential is the geographical location of a country? How much does it affect the fortunes of a country? How would you rate India's location? What are your top 5? Let's look at the map of the world. The number one best geographic location is the United States. Let me explain why. Look at the United States. To its east, it has the Atlantic Ocean. If someone wants to invade the US, they have to cross the Atlantic Ocean. Not going to happen. I mean, extremely difficult. To the west, they have the Pacific Ocean, an even wider stretch of land. You want to invade the US, you're going to have to cross the Pacific Ocean. Very difficult. To the north, you have a vassal state, Canada, which doesn't matter at all. Completely insignificant nation in all ways, in every way. To the south, you have another vassal state, unfortunately, Mexico, which used to be a civilization once upon a time. It's no longer that. So the US, and if you look at the Southern American nations and South America, all are entirely aligned with the US, except for one nation, Venezuela, which I'm sure they will take care of very soon. Very soon, it looks like there'll be a regime change in Venezuela. So the entirety of the of the Americas is controlled by the US. So there is no threat the US faces. And if you look at the US, it's a continent-sized nation, a complete autarky. Everything that you need is available. All the resources you need are available in the US, and they have tremendous access to the world's oceans on both sides. Brilliant geographic location. What else can you ask for, right? That's number one. I mean, top five, I don't know. India has a great location. We dominate the Indian Ocean region. Apart from the US, no other nation dominates a body of water, a major ocean like we do, right? Uh, we have every possible terrain you can imagine, every possible climate you can imagine, from Arctic climate to super tropical climate. We have archipelagos, we have islands, we have volcanoes, we have the tallest mountains, we have deserts, we have snows, we have valleys, we have everything. Of course, the neighbors aren't great, but that is because of our own weakness. So geographically, we are fantastically located. Um, the Chinese have good advantages. The Russians have tremendous advantages. So overall, the geographical location of a country is super influential in shaping the nation's fortunes. That's very important for sure. Chat DSP says Asif Munir did the nuclear rant again. What is the red line India should be wary of where the US permits the use of nukes? Would Pakistan disintegration be one? Could Indian advance be another? Or no red lines whatsoever? What? Okay, so what is the red line if crossed will result in the Americans permitting Pakistan to use nuclear weapons against India? I think that would be the disintegration of Pakistan. Let's think about it. Pakistani disintegration would definitely be a red line that the Americans would be okay with Pakistan using nuclear weapons. Indian advance into Pakistan, which would take out big chunks of Pakistani occupied territory, would be another, I suppose. I think if India takes back POK, it may not quite be a red line, especially if it is done so fast that no one has any time to react. If we take 3 weeks to take back POK, you may have the possibility of nuclear weapons use. But if we take it in 24 hours to 48 hours, so fast that, in a blink of an eye, then it's a fait accompli. It's done. Then what? Then there is no chance of a nuclear use, right? So if we take territory super fast, lightning fast, then there is less of a chance of nuclear weapons use. So you take territory rapidly, then you stop. Then you unilaterally declare a ceasefire. Well, then there's no other, then how do you use nukes when there's a ceasefire in operation unilaterally? So if you do a pulse pause kind of war, you rapidly advance, take a big chunk of territory, then you do unilaterally stop. Then there's very little chance of nuclear weapons use. So I would say that nuclear weapons could be used if India takes a very long time to take territory, huffing, puffing along slowly. That is a very bad, approach. Secondly, if the Pakistani nation itself is on the brink of disintegrating, the US could potentially permit the Pakistanis to use those nuclear weapons. So it depends. If India advances on Lahore or Islamabad, that could be possibly a red line. So I'm just speculating here. Okay, I am not aware of what the actual red lines are, if they do exist. But one thing is certain: if the Pakistanis use a nuclear weapon against us, their nation is going to be vaporized. That is a guarantee. So if the Americans do issue the order to Pakistan to use nuclear weapons, it will most likely be, major cities will be targeted in India. Maybe Delhi, maybe something else. The objective will be to launch a decapitation strike on India. That's essentially what they will try, because they know that if they use nukes, they're going to be vaporized. So then if they use nukes, they should do as much damage as possible before being vaporized. So it's going to be that sort of thing, if it ever happens. One hopes it never happens. Pakistan needs to disintegrate. It's an artificial temporary terrorist nation. So that's the kind of scenarios one can think of. Biju Sai says Deepavali ki shubhkamnaएं. Thank you very much. Aapko bhi Deepavali ki shubhkamnaएं. Thank you very much. Pratik says, I think Trump is going to be another JFK. Okay. All right, sir. Ishant Singh says, can India achieve rapid state transformation and economic self-reliance while maintaining democracy, or does breaking colonial bureaucratic structures require authoritarian methods like Stalin's USSR? Well, that's a very interesting question you're asking. You can't achieve rapid transformation while maintaining this current form of democracy. No, not possible. The current form of democracy is actually a form of super mediocrity. You can have democracy while having rapid transformation, but that has to be a very centralized form of democracy, a very strong power structure. In India, we have a very loose power structure. The prime minister doesn't have a lot of powers in India. The states are super powerful. There are so many things that are state subjects. Law and order is a state issue. The center has to stay out of it, and so on. That's one example. There are so many other things that are like state issues, and the center has to stay out of those things. So India is a very, very weak democracy. Very weak. The center doesn't have sufficient power to really, push across changes and reforms in the country. So if we want rapid transformation, economic self-reliance, and all those things, we will have to change the entire system of governance of India, which necessarily will require, if you want to do it rapidly, pretty authoritarian methods, right? If you want to dismantle the colonial system, which still exists, you're going to have to go up against everybody who benefits from the colonial system, which is all essentially, well, people who are part of the governance machinery. It will also include the politicians. It will also include the education system, the people who benefit from that, the super mediocrities. It will essentially, you will need a revolution for that to happen, because so many people who are entrenched in power, they benefit from the system. Millions of these people, they benefit from the system, which keeps India down. Yeah, big ask. SS Phoenix says, it'll be useful to cover Mackinder's Eurasian heartland theory. I have covered that. Just Google, just see, I'll show you how to do it. Yeah. So let's go to Google. 1 second. I'll show you what I mean by that. Share screen. Okay, let me go to Google. All right, let's go to my YouTube channel. Okay, we go to my YouTube channel. All right, and then if you go to my channel, there must be a search box here. Mackinder. So there's at least one question over here that I've addressed, and maybe it's in this episode 103. So I have definitely covered this in the past. Maybe it will be beneficial for me to make a separate video about that. I'm sure I agree with you that very few Indians are aware of the Eurasian heartland theory. So what is Mackinder's theory? It says that it introduces the concept of something called the world island. Okay. And it says that to control the world, you have to control the world island, and to control the world island, you have to control the heartland of the world island. What is the heartland? It is essentially the heart of Eurasia, which is present-day Russia. And it says that to control Russia, the pathway to controlling Russia is through what is currently called Ukraine. So the Ukraine war is essentially that. And there is something called the rimland nations. India is a rimland nation. It says rimland nations can never be world leaders. It's always the heartland nations that can be world leaders. And to control the entire world, if the US wants to control the entire world, it has to control the region which is currently called, which is Russia, the heartland of Eurasia. That essentially, in a very, very small nutshell, is Mackinder's Eurasian heartland theory. You can obviously expand it in great detail. So that's what it is. Now, SS Phoenix says that very few Indians, Americans, populists are aware of the design by the British establishment to foment war, suppress civilizations, and realize the new world order. Is it the British establishment? Is it the Western establishment? Whatever you want to call it. Suppressing civilizations is something that definitely is on the agenda. And that's why they are specifically going after India, because India still is kind of still an existing old civilization. The Chinese also, you could say to some extent, are a civilization. Both India and China are kind of on the same boat. The Chinese are more in line with their civilizational heritage because they write Chinese, they speak Chinese. The Chinese language is the medium of instruction in schools, colleges, universities. They eat with chopsticks. They don't worship the West. They don't have an inferiority complex. Right? All of that is there. India is the complete opposite, a slave-minded nation, a nation that is saddled with mental colonization. So China is ahead of India, but India still is. The Chinese have become a communist nation, so they have kind of set aside their culture beyond what I just said. They no longer worship the old gods and all that, the gods that their ancestors worshipped. They have a totally different atheistic system. India, to some extent, still is more in line with its culture. So very, yeah, different forms of deracination that we see in these two old civilizations, and that's why they would like to disestablish these two civilizations in different ways, suppress civilizations. Realize the new world order, which is a one world government, either overtly or by from the back door, etc. Yeah. So I agree. It's useful to cover this topic in more detail. Maybe I can do that. So thank you for the recommendation and suggestion. Thank you, sir. All right. Utios says maybe 6-hour episode on 300. What are my thoughts? So recently, a couple of months ago, I did an 8-hour episode, Ask Abhijit. And I was personally super surprised that I was able to do that without any ill effects. At the end, it actually ended up being an 8-hour, 45-minute episode, almost 9 hours. And by the end of the episode, I was wondering, well, will I be able to speak tomorrow? But I turned out to be okay. So it looks like I have the vocal and physical stamina to sit for 8 hours and speak. Yeah, so is that something you all would like? This is episode 298. So next weekend, Sunday, should be episode 300. Would you like me to do a long episode to celebrate number 300, triple century? 6 hours, maybe longer. What do you all say? Maybe I'll put a poll on the community page and you all can vote on it. If it's something you would like me to do, I'll be happy to do it. Yeah. 300 episodes is, I would say, not a small achievement. That's quite a number. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be happy to do something like that. If everyone wants that. Yeah. If it's something that's there by popular demand, I'll be very happy to do that. So thank you for the suggestion. Let me know. I'll put out a poll so that we can have actual numbers and people can vote on that. Pratham Medhekar says, what should India do if Pakistan invades Afghanistan? If Pakistan decides to invade Afghanistan, they'll be in deep, deep trouble. But what should India do? India should supply a certain weapon systems to Afghanistan. If the Pakistanis are conducting airstrikes in Afghanistan, we should supply the Akash system to Afghanistan, which is the world's best battle-tested air defense system, anti-air defense, system. It was battle-tested during Operation Sindoor, and it took everything out. So we should maybe help Afghanistan with that. Maybe supply some Akash systems to Afghanistan, and maybe we should supply some BrahMos batteries to Afghanistan. Something like that. All right. Sir James, Rabbi Mizraki, okay, calls Hindus goy something worshippers. Even the Jew can't stand him. There's a reason Churchill warned us about you. Okay, I am not entirely sure about who Rabbi Mizraki is and what he calls Hindus. Yeah, so I am not sure I can comment about this because I'm not aware of the context and the background. But James, it is always good to have your questions on the Ask Abhijit show. I appreciate you, sir. Thank you. I do. I see MBs says, is India doing enough to build a leverage and influence in resource-rich African economies through digital infrastructure like UPI and other services? Well, if you ask me personally, and everything is obviously here personal, I would say we are not doing enough. I think there is still much more that we can do. To partner with various African economies. Obviously, there is already competition in Africa. I mean, tremendous competition. On the one hand, the Chinese, first of all, Africa was colonized by the Europeans in the 1800s, and even before that to some extent. And it was completely destroyed by the 1950s and 1960s. And then the Europeans, like, kind of left Africa, adio Africa, sort of. Adio Africa. But movie recommendation, not, I mean, very interesting movie, but you have to, have a little bit of a stout temperament to watch it. It's called Africa Adio. I'm sure it's available on YouTube. Is it Africa Adio? It's not. It's not for the faint of heart. First of all, trailer. I think it's available on YouTube. The entire movie. It's various versions of the movie are available, and it's about the time when the Europeans were moving out of Africa, and various African countries were kind of being given independence, even though you had dictators ruling the countries and that sort of thing. So Africa was destroyed by the Europeans, and then after the 1950s and 60s, they continued ruling Africa and extracting resources out of Africa through proxy dictatorships and so on. And then the Chinese started, making their presence felt in Africa and partnering with various African countries through various means to extract resources. Now the Russians are also involved in the Sahel region. So it's Russian muscle, Chinese money, that sort of thing, which is up against the US led old establishment. The French have withdrawn from Africa. I think there is significant scope for India to get more involved than what it is right now. India is hardly involved in Africa right now. We have good relations with a lot of African nations. We have done nice things for Africa. For example, in 2023, when we had the G20 summit in Delhi, we made the African Union a member of the G20. So it's now the G21 essentially. So all those things we've done, but we need to do more beyond the symbolic gestures. We need to do more, So I think India is right now not quite doing enough to build leverage and influence in various African countries. Through a variety of means. We can certainly do much more. Yeah. Shivan says, Happy Deepavali. Thank you very much. Wish you the same. Indian scam centers have become a big headache, not only for us Indians, but abroad too. Last year, I was in Seoul, South Korea, and all that people were asking us is, why do so many scammers originate in India? Is there nothing we can do to cut down on this? I don't know. Scam centers. Well, that's a stereotype that exists about India, right? That India is home to scammers, scam call centers, and so on. Is it that big of a problem? I am personally not aware of this. In case it is, then and in case it's a nuisance, and in case it is something that is creating a bad image of India internationally, then maybe the government of India should pass some laws that makes any kind of scam illegal, in case those laws don't exist. I mean, anything that is considered a scam is obviously illegal, right? Scam means you're doing something illegal. You're fleecing someone. You're stealing the money or whatever, misrepresenting things and so on. Yeah. In case this is a big problem, or even if it's a medium problem or small problem, I think, I suppose laws would exist in India to criminalize any scam-like activity. In case such laws, so I have not looked into this. It's all about, even if laws exist, if you don't enforce the laws, then what's the point, right? So yeah, I think India needs to crack down on these things, because it looks like from what you're saying, South Korea, that a lot of people there seem to regard India as a nation where a lot of scammers originate. Yeah, so maybe this needs to be brought to the government of India's notice, and they need to crack down on these people who are running such scams. Definitely, it's a cause for concern. Yeah. Nikhil Bansali says, how is Modi BJP performance in geopolitics and why? I would say it's the best performance of all the governments thus far. Okay. How many go? See, what are the major regimes that we've had in India since dominion status, which is 1947? So 1947 we get dominion status. 1950 or somewhere around that time we become a republic. Around that time we have the Nehruvian regime that goes on until the 1960s. Then we have Lal Bahadur Shastri. Then we have Mrs. Gandhi. Then you have briefly Mr. Morarji Desai. Then Mrs. Gandhi back again. Then she is assassinated, sadly. Then Rajiv Gandhi comes to power. Then you have like three. Then you have this period of instability in politics. You have like multiple governments, Chandrasekhar, VP Singh, HD Devegowda, etc., that come and go, come and go, come and go. Then you have PV Narasimha Rao, who lasts 5 years. Then you have Mr. Vajpayee, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, who is there for a while. Then he comes back and he completes his term. Then you have Dr. Manmohan Singh, and then you have Mr. Modi. If you look at all these governments, I think Mr. Modi and the BJP, from 2014 until now, their performance in geopolitics has been the most robust. And people will say, what are you talking about? The US has become an enemy. The US treats India as an enemy today. The US has a very adversarial approach towards India. During Dr. Manmohan Singh's time, and during other times, the US were so nice to India. So nice to us. They treated us so nicely. And look at them now, they're treating us like an adversary. Why is that? It's precisely because the past 10 years we've become more powerful. We are no longer an irrelevant nation. If you are irrelevant, the powerful nations will treat you nicely. At least the words will be nice. The actions will be benign neglect or some sort of exploitation. But the moment you start rising and growing as a genuine world power, that's when they start looking at you through an adversarial lens. So the past 11 years, India has become a genuinely powerful nation. It's one of the top world powers. It's the fourth most powerful nation overall in the world. Cumulative hard power. India was nowhere 10 years ago. Nowhere. I would say the performance has been the best of all the Indian governments we've had. So your performance in geopolitics is entirely tied to your hard power. How much hard power do you have? The more hard power you have, the more leverage you have in geopolitics. So I would say it's the best government we've had thus far. Of course, they can do things better, much better. No question about that. But still, overall, I would say it's the best we've had. Anonymous Scientist, good to see you, sir. Bonsoir, happy Choti Diwali. Thank you. Same to you as well. Merci. Was the October 7 attack carried out to derail the IMEC and sabotage the Abraham Accords? I can't say. See, this October 7 attack was carried out by terrorists, by Hamas, a heinous terrorist organization. And it was a heinous attack. Now, why did a bunch of terrorists do what they do? I think only terrorists can understand. Why did they choose that day? I suppose they chose that day because it was the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. Maybe it was that, like a day or give or take a day, right? So the Hamas don't care about the IMEC. Hamas only cares about being terrorists and do whatever terrorists do. And Hamas was aligned with Pakistan. The Hamas supported Pakistani terrorism against India. So I'm not sure if IMEC, derailing IMEC was part of the agenda. Sabotaging the Abraham Accords, I'm not sure. I don't really know what was going on in the minds of the Hamas leadership, but it was clearly suicidal. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what was behind that. If it was done by an actual nation, one could think about what that nation wants. If you think about Hamas as a terrorist organization, all they want is the destruction of Israel. So I would say they chose that day because it coincided with roughly the 50th anniversary of Israel's biggest intelligence failure. Perhaps that was the reason for that. And I'm not sure if this had anything to do with IMEC or the Abraham Accords. Ritwik says, why the US can regime change only in poor democratic countries? The US can't buy people in Iran or North Korea. Because Mr. Khamenei, Mr. Kim will immediately shot them. Is it a benefit of not having a democracy? Look. Let's say you have all across the world the same system, same democracy. Same democratic system, plug and play. So then, if you are the US, you can take out a leader and put another leader, plug and play. And in a couple of months, people will say, okay, everything is back to normal. You understand? Democracy that's the deal with democracy. Democracy is not, well, it's hardly democratic actually. It's an illusion of democracy. There can be no real democracy in the world actually, if you study what democracy actually is. And I'm not sure democracy is even the best system ever, because it is the rule of the it's ruled by the mob. See, in any nation, in any society, the progress of the society depends on the top 0.1% of the people. So maybe the Greeks were right when they allowed only certain people to vote and participate in democracy, which is like 1%. Women were not allowed to vote. I'm not in favor of not allowing women to vote. I'm completely in favor of equality of genders, no question about that. But the Greeks did not allow women to vote. They did not allow slaves to vote. A lot of people were slaves. They did not allow peasants to vote. Only the super rich and powerful people who had a track record of achieving things, they were allowed to vote. That was the kind of democracy they had. But in the modern democratic system, it is the rule of the rabble. And the rabble isn't typically the most intelligent, unfortunately. Right? So that has the effect that you often have very low quality leaders who come to power in various countries. People who are charismatic but can't do a thing. People who are great at talking and giving speeches but can't really make any good changes or govern properly. And then when you have a situation like that, you can create these fake movements, that people are dissatisfied and they want a different leadership. And then you can install NGOs in the country, that astroturf movements that create these fake grassroots movements, and you can achieve regime change. And then you just plug and play and change the leader. And in a couple of months, everything goes back to normal and people will be back to scrolling reels. Opium of the masses. So that's why regime change can work spectacularly in poor democratic countries. And democratic countries, even in rich democratic countries, you can have that. Look at the EU countries. They don't even have democracy now. They have the illusion of democracy. But when it comes to Iran and North Korea, well, you see, these are dictatorial nations. Even China, you could say, yeah, let's stick to China, Iran, North Korea. Yeah, they will shoot anyone who tries to, rise up against the government. So that certainly is a benefit of not having a democracy. Look, what do people want? What is it that human beings want in life? They want peace, stability, prosperity, good quality of life, and great future for their children and their descendants. That's all you want. They don't care about democracy or dictatorship. If you have a dictator who provides all of this and people are happy, they don't care. So the point is, the system doesn't matter. What matters is the outcome for the people. It doesn't matter whether the cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice. But the Americans, they have created this illusion that only white cats work and black cats are bad. So that's the mental conditioning that is imposed upon people. Okay, Lavanya Shah says, will a gold revaluation happen in the US with respect to the dollar and then spread across other countries and currencies? Your thoughts on its effects? Happy Deepavali. Happy Deepavali to you as well, ma'am. Will a gold revaluation happen in the US with respect to the dollar? I doubt it very much. If you are talking about pegging the US to the price of gold once again, pegging the US dollar to the price of gold once again, like it used to be before the 1970s, I think that's very unlikely. Because look, if you look at what 1 kilogram of gold could buy you in, let's say, 1950, let's say it could buy you a nice big house with X number of rooms and nice walled garden around you. Maybe, let's say, hypothetically, 1 kilo of gold could buy you that much in 1950 in the US. Well, I'll tell you what, 1 kilo of gold will buy you exactly the same thing today in the US. But 1 kilo of gold, if it cost X dollars in 1950, it will cost way more today. So the US dollar has lost a tremendous amount of value today compared to what its value was in 1950. So if you want to peg the US dollar to the price of gold today, um, it will significantly devalue the US dollar, right? And if you want to peg every currency in the world to the price of gold once again, then all the currency rates and exchange rates will go for a toss, and they will again they will change significantly, and the US dollar may no longer have the same value it has today, and that will not be good for the US. So I think that it is very unlikely that the US government will peg the US dollar to the price of gold once again. I don't think that's on the cards. If it spreads to other countries and currencies, it will completely reconfigure the exchange rates and completely destabilize the global economy, right? So I think it's pretty unlikely to happen. Happy Deepavali. Anonymous scientist says Donald J. Trump has authorized regime change in Venezuela, and Machado has won the Nobel Prize for peace. Peace. Is the US desperate for oil to counter cheap Russian supplies? No. The US is the world's largest producer of oil in the world today. It's possibly one of the largest exporters of oil as well in the world today. What the US wants to do is they want to control the entire supply of oil across the world as much as possible. They want to control as much as possible of the world's supply of oil. So Venezuela is a major oil exporting nation. Let's quickly Google the top 10 oil producing nations. Top 10 oil producing countries. Let's see. So number one is the US. Oh, Venezuela doesn't figure. Doesn't exist here really. Venezuela definitely is one of the. Okay, let's see here. Wikipedia. I'm not sure if it's completely accurate, but let's see. US, Saudi Arabia, Russia, etc., etc. Where is Venezuela? Venezuela is 19, but it's still a major oil producer, and so the US wants to control that, because by doing so they can impose more pressure on various countries, and they can so that gives them more control over the world's oil supply. So the US is not desperate for oil to counter cheap Russian supplies. They want to cut down all the non-Russian independent sources of oil that nations have access to. So there are various nations that are independent but actually are controlled by the US. So they want to add one more to the list so that they can. So the more oil sources you can control, the more you can pressurize various countries. That's the whole point. So it looks like a regime change will happen in Venezuela sooner or later. Maduro looks like, unfortunately, his days are numbered as the leader of Venezuela. And if a regime change happens, then he will probably go to jail, or something worse will happen to him, unless he can go into exile to some other country. Machado, this lady that nobody was aware of, she is now a Nobel Prize winner. And the first thing she does is she goes on a podcast with Donald Trump Jr. And she says, please take our oil. When the regime change happens, we will give you everything. Your companies can come and make huge amounts of money. That's what she's saying. She's essentially, she can't wait to sell her country off to the US. So the Nobel Prize for Peace has become a political prize. It's like it's like the Magsaysay Award on steroids. So generally, see, the Magsaysay Award in the past used to be a pretty good award. It was not political in the past, but in recent times, it's become a very political award. Typically, not always, please all understand, there are always exceptions. Just to put it on the record, there are always exceptions, but typically the Magsaysay Award is given to people who serve the US. It is given as a prize for services rendered and a prize that incentivizes more services in the future. So people who serve the US, not their country, typically, not always, are given the Magsaysay Prize. And now it also clearly applies to the Nobel Peace Prize also. So that's the deal now. Ritvik says geopolitical importance of Argentina and Brazil. I mean, they are big countries. Are they sovereign or US vassals? They have a great location also. What do you think? What do you think? The entirety of the Americas, whether it's the continent of North America or the continent of South America, entirely under US domination. Apart from Venezuela, which they will deal with, it looks like very soon, and Cuba. Cuba, they have allowed it to exist for whatever reason, as as a somewhat anti-US nation, ideologically opposed to the US and that sort of thing. And they've completely beggarized, pauperized Cuba. Go to Cuba, you will realize what I mean. Crumbling nation, sadly. So, what's the geopolitical importance of Argentina? What can I say? I'm a big fan of Argentina. I love their footballers. In 1998, I supported. Which nation did I support? Oh, no. 1998, I supported France. Sorry. Yeah, France or Brazil. That's a different story. Forget about that. So, I've always supported their football team because my football team doesn't even exist in world football, actually. So, yeah. So, I'm a big fan of Argentina, but they are geopolitically not very important, unfortunately. Brazil is important because of its enormous size and its big exporter of various kinds of resources, raw materials, soybeans, whatnot. Yeah, from that perspective, it's kind of somewhat important, and it's also a member of BRICS, which kind of aligns it softly against the US, but not very much. And the US has singled out Brazil for special treatment, 50% tariffs. The last I heard, maybe it's changed now. I'm not sure. So, look, are they sovereign or US vassals? Is the question you're asking at the end. There are only 5 sovereign nations in the world. That's my answer. Which are these 5 sovereign nations? The US, Russia, China, India, and Israel. No other country is fully sovereign. And if you are in the Americas, whether it's North America or South America, you typically are in some shape or form, to some extent, kind of a US vassal. Kunal Krish says, why do most Russians hate Stalin now? I'm not sure. Do most Russians hate him? A lot of them perhaps would hate him, but I would say that some Russians would also admire him today. Overall, look, he is regarded as a very heavy-handed dictator, a person who caused a lot of suffering in Russia. Millions of deaths happened, similar to what Mao did in China, but to a smaller way. So Stalin did not cause the number of deaths of his own people that Mao did in China, but he still was a very brutal dictator, and he kind of mismanaged to some extent some of the governance of his country, and you had some famines, you had some forced displacements of the Tatars into Crimean Tatars into some of the parts of the country, and so on. So overall, he's regarded as a very brutal dictator, and that's why many Russians possibly hate him. I'm not sure if there's a tremendous amount of hate towards him. One of the mistakes he did was, assigning Crimea to the Ukrainian SSR, which eventually ended up causing the Ukraine war. I mean, the Ukraine war and the re-annexation of Crimea by Russia. So multiple factors. Aman Patania says, isn't UBI gonna be inhabitable? Isn't UBI gonna be inhabitable if the AI and robots take over and a huge chunk of the population will be jobless? Then what will happen then? Universal basic income. Look, I am of the opinion it's not a great idea. And then that's probably why many of the world leaders would want it to happen. Okay, you are trying to say, isn't universal basic income, isn't it going to be inevitable, is what you're asking me? Okay. If the AI is becoming more and more relevant in the world today. A lot of automation is happening. And when you combine AI with robotics, you're going to have even more automation. More jobs will be automated, and you will not need people for that. So more people will lose jobs. And the more this penetrates society, as is inevitable, like you say, larger and larger chunks of the population will kind of become jobless. What happens then? I think then UBI will have to be implemented, universal basic income, because people, have to live, right? And to live, you need money. So I think UBI is unfortunately something that could become inevitable. Yeah, but that will not be good for the world. It will not be good for society. It will lead to all kinds of problems. It will lead to population collapse. It will lead to a lot of dissatisfaction. It will lead to all kinds of issues. But it looks like the way things are going, it's clear that AI is going to become something that plays more and more of a role in the industry, in various industries, all industries. In 10 years, AI may be like essentially may have taken over significant percentages of all industries, and lots of people would have possibly lost jobs, especially in developed countries, um, and also in low income countries like India, possibly. So yeah, UBI may become inevitable then. I'm of the opinion it's a very bad idea, but it may be the only option left for governments. So yeah, it's quite possible that it will become inevitable. Project Smiling Buddha says Indian e-visa website is ugly and buggy. IITD foreign admission website same. IIT Delhi. Okay. When will we get these basics right? Frustrating and humiliating. Low standards. This is the current reality of India. Standards. Things have improved. For example, there was a time when getting a passport in India used to take months and months and months. It was a torturous process. It was a process of torture that everybody had to undergo, unless you had connections, in which case you would get a passport in a couple of hours. But most people can't do that, right? It was torture. Today, the passport process is super streamlined, super painless. So things have improved. But still, it depends on who's running what show, right? The Indian e-visa website is ugly. So I don't have to take an Indian e-visa. So I have not seen the website. Would you like me to see it? Why not? Okay. Um, India e-visa. Let's see. Indian e-visa online. Gov.in. Looks like this is the one. The site cannot be reached. Reload. Cannot be reached. Reload. Well. Okay. Looks like they don't want me to see. Maybe it's available outside India. I have no idea. I wasn't able to access it. My internet connection is working just fine because I'm able to stream right now in 4K. So, okay. So I don't know why it's the case. It's typically a bunch of bureaucrats that run these things, and obviously it's for a lot of people outside of India. It'll be their first impression and first interaction with India, the Indian e-visa website, and if that's a poor experience, half of them will say, forget it, I'm not applying for the visa. India has the potential to be a tourism superpower, to be the world's largest tourism destination, but we aren't anywhere close to it. I'm not sure we are even in the top 10 when it comes to tourist footfalls in the world. I mean, what on earth are the various ministries doing? Huge L, like they say. Huge failure. Yeah, very, very unfortunate, very frustrating, very humiliating, like you say. I completely agree with you. What can I say? It's so unfortunate. Kunal Krish says, how to de-brainwash someone about their country. We start with the basics. First of all, look, it'll only work if somebody has the willingness to listen to something that makes them uncomfortable. There are things like, see, brainwashing happens progressively over the years. It starts when you first enter school. Nursery. A for apple. It starts from that time. And then you have junior KG, senior KG, first, second, third, blah, blah, blah. And at each different level, you have different forms of brainwashing. And the teachers don't even realize that they are brainwashing the kids. So this is a process that happens over like 20 years. And that is something that eventually forms the foundation of everything you believe. So it's a very uncomfortable thing to even consider that all the things you believe and regard as the truth are false. So most people won't even be willing to listen to you if you want to de-brainwash them. So first of all, the person has to be willing to go through that experience, and then you go and show them the truth. And it once again, you do it step by step. It takes time. Ritvik says, please explain current how the student-teacher relation is in India compared to the West. How bad exactly is our education system, which is still colonized? Okay, look, I can't explain in 2 minutes. It's not a subject that can be explained very in brief. But let me, before I answer your question, let me show you this. Once again, let's go to my YouTube channel. Okay, YouTube. All right, here we are. Let's go to my channel, YouTube channel, and I will show you, if you want to know the answer, how to get the answer. Let's go to the oldest video live streams, and please go to these episodes over here. Let it load. Episode 28, episode 30, episode 31. In these 3 episodes, which were streamed like 4 years ago, I have gone into great detail as to what are the problems that plague our education system and how the education system is incredibly harmful to our civilization. Go through episode 28, 30, 31. I not only talk about what the problems are, I give clear solutions. Okay? That's what you should look at if you are interested in understanding what the issues are and what the solutions should be like. I don't believe in simply complaining boo hoo hoo. If you complain, you should also give solutions. I have given solutions. Now, to answer your question, what's the student teacher relation like? Tremendous power asymmetry. The teacher's job is to impart knowledge, wisdom, learning, data, and to guide the students and to ensure that the students learn skills, they acquire knowledge, and they become more competent, more proficient, and more confident and better human beings. That's supposed to be the job of a teacher. I believe everybody will agree with me. That's what a teacher is supposed to do. But the average teacher doesn't do that. The average teacher doesn't care about their job. The average teacher wants to play power games. I think every Indian knows what I'm talking about. They want to enforce obedience. Why? You have to enforce good manners and civilized behavior, not necessarily obedience. In India, a student has to be, if a teacher likes a student, what's the best thing they can say about a student? He is an obedient student, very obedient. That's the best praise a teacher can give in India. Not brilliant, right? Not original, not creative, no, obedient. And what's the best? What is the student the teachers like best? The student who will be super deferential will say, teacher, please, can I get up? Teacher, may I sit down? Teacher, may I go to the toilet? Teacher, may I come in, teacher? Teacher, may I breathe, teacher? That sort of thing. They want to create sheep. And so we have all these problems, right? That's the issue. And the education system, if you want to understand why it's colonized, I can't answer in brief. Watch those episodes. All the answers are there. SS Phoenix says Indians should stop obsession with institutions and the government need to convert economic growth into infrastructure and systems development. Trump and Putin and Modi, etc., are RXN reaction to failed rules-based technocrat order. Love your work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Indians, are they obsessed with institutions? Indians, like I said, are mentally conditioned to be super deferential to authority. You see, anybody who is in a position of authority, Indians will automatically believe that that person, whatever they say, is right. It's the word of God. Indians don't ask questions they don't question authority. I'm not saying revolt. I'm not saying go and do violence. No, absolutely not. But question the accepted wisdom. Question what people are saying. Ask yourself, are they doing the right thing? Can things be done better? Is so-and-so institution serving the country or serving itself? Hypothetically. I'm not naming an institution, by the way. Okay? So is so-and-so institution X, what is it supposed to actually do? What role is it actually supposed to play for the country? And what is it actually doing? Indians are also very polite. They will not say certain things. Right? They will not ask certain questions. If you ask some great person, What are the problems in India today? They'll say the problems like caste is a problem, um, and whatever else. Caste is a problem, and political this is a problem, that is a problem. Sir, is corruption a problem? Nobody will dare ask. So there are all these issues, and Indians are super brainwashed. Indians are incapable of critical thinking. Indians are mentally lobotomized through no fault of their own. Indians are victimized. Indians don't even realize that they've been victimized, and that's the issue. The government needs to convert economic growth into infrastructure and systems development. But the money has to go somewhere else, right? If you convert economic growth into infrastructure, then the money will be used for public work. Money is precious, right? I mean, we do infrastructure work every day. Every year we rebuild the roads. We lay a road, low roads across the city in some hypothetical Indian city. We lay down the roads. Let's say for 6 months of the year we are laying down roads. From, let's say, November to May, we are laying down roads. Then the monsoon comes, rains come, and by the time the rains are over, we have dug up the roads again because we have forgotten to put some pipes there or whatever. So then 6 months we will dig up the roads. Then once again we'll lay down the roads. Then once again we'll dig up the roads. So we are always doing infrastructure development, always doing it, never ending, sir, and so on. So this is the problem with India. Look, in the number one problem in India, which is keeping India down, is the alleged hypothetical corruption. Okay. So Trump and Modi and Putin are reactions to failed rules-based technocrat order. All right. Yeah. So that's the issue. Well, okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Black Boss says your channel got recommended to me in May when India did Operation Sindoor. Not everyone here agrees with our government. Given our own history, tariff, sanctions, wars, empire mentality, will it ever change? Thank you. I'm assuming that you are from the US. I'm sure not everybody agrees with what the government is doing. I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be a country where you can disagree with whatever is currently being done. You should have the right to disagree. You should have the right to question, and you should have the right to raise your opinion, to raise your voice, to voice your opinions. And I suppose the US does all of this to a very great extent, maybe more than other parts of the world. Of course, there are certain things you can't do in the US, like everywhere else. Given your own history, yes, the US history, we know America's history, yeah. Tariffs, sanctions, wars, empire mentality, that's kind of what sums up more recent US history, 20th century onwards, kind of. Will it ever change? Well, things always change. All empires rise. Every empire has risen and then fallen. That's what world history tells us. See, history is cyclical in nature. Cycles. Every single empire. See, if you look at India, we've had so many empires that came and went within India. How many can I name very rapidly? The Mauryan Empire, 2500 BC roughly. And the Kushan Empire, about 100 AD. No, let's say 0 AD, 1 AD. That's the Kushan Empire. Then you had the Gupta Empire, about 250, 300 AD. Then you had the Chola Empire, 1000 AD. Then you had the Maratha Empire, which is more recent, and so on. So all of these empires came and went. In China, you had so many empires that came and went. You had the Roman Empire, the Eastern and Western Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire. You had the Ottoman Empire. You can go on. The list is endless. Empires rise and they fall. Typically, an empire lasts between 250 to 350 years. Sometimes longer, but usually that's the average length. So the US is an empire. It is the Roman Empire redux, the Roman Empire on steroids, the greatest empire that ever existed. That's the US today. And because of that, maybe it will last longer. Maybe it will last 1,000 years. Who knows? And as long as an empire exists, it's going to do everything it takes to remain powerful and to remain the sole hegemon in the world, like the US is today. It will not tolerate the potential rise of other competitors or adversaries on the horizon, and it will do whatever it takes to, curtail their rise, or maybe to end those potential threats. And it will do everything it can. Tariffs, sanctions, wars, empire mentality, all of that will be done. Will that ever change? It will never ever change. Why will it never change? Human nature. We are an aggressive, warlike species. We are one of the most aggressive species that's ever lived on the planet. And our closest relatives, the chimpanzees, are just as aggressive, if not more as aggressive than us, more aggressive than us. So that will never change. Even if this current empire eventually dissolves, new empires will rise and they will continue the same things. So as long as humans exist, I suppose we're going to have this. We are a violent species, an aggressive, warlike species. I suppose that will never change, unfortunately. Uh, so what needs to happen then? I think it all depends on, to a large extent, it depends on culture. If you are from a culture that glorifies violence and all that, then you will have more of that. If you are from a culture that says you should have temperance, you should be less violent, or ideally prioritize non-violence, then you will have less warfare and stuff, that sort of thing. But overall, things won't really change. Jasdeep Saran says, how did the West become an advanced society despite being democratic? Who says the West is democratic? Who says the West is democratic? Can you please share the last 5 books you read? Oh, and we vote for the 8-hour episode. All right, we do. Okay. Look, how did the West become an advanced society? What do we mean by advanced society? First of all, technological advancement. Secondly, powerful military. Yeah. Hegemony, military hegemony of the West. And then a good quality of life for the people. The West currently gives its citizens and people who live there the best quality of life in the world. Come to India. The West is incredibly superior to India in terms of quality of life for the average person. Basic human dignity, basic all that. How did the West become so advanced? To have all of these things, first of all, you need money, treasure, gold, wealth, all of that. And the West did. And how do you acquire all of that? Well, one way of doing it is by trading with the world and providing value so that you get gold or wealth. That's one way of doing it. It's a slow process. Or you can just conquer the world and destroy everything and plunder everything. That's what the West did. They became incredibly good at the organized and scientific application of violence. The West perfected that in the past 500 years. And they conquered the entire world. The Portuguese and the Spanish, they had the Treaty of Tordesillas, in which they divided the world into 2 halves. You take this, I take that. The Spaniards said, we will take the Western Hemisphere. The Portuguese said, we'll take the Eastern Hemisphere. And they went and colonized whatever they could. Then you had the scramble for Africa, and the whole of Africa was plundered. And the British, they plundered other parts of the world, and they occupied India for 250 years, and they extracted everything of value out of India. So these are the means by which the West became incredibly rich, incredibly prosperous, and then they were able to give this quality of life to their people. And obviously they valued scientific and technological progress. And that's how they became an advanced society. And they were never democratic. They still are not, by the way. They are not. They seem to be democratic, but they're not. Go to Europe and understand why it's not a democracy. None of the European nations is sovereign. They vote for the presidents or prime ministers, but who rules them? Brussels. Do you call that a democracy? Really? The US, I've already explained. The last 5 books I read, I don't know. I've read so many books. The one book I was reading today was Elon Musk's biography by Walter Isaacson. That's what I was reading today, a few hours ago. What else have I been reading? I don't know. I've got so many books mixed up in my head. The last one I can think of is that one, right? And you are voting for the 8-hour episode. All right. Okay. Thank you for the vote. Durgesh says, Israelis seem to be a very capable and enterprising population. Why don't they buy a piece of land in a no-conflict zone and live peacefully? Look, they have their own territory. They have their own country. The nation of Israel is located where you had essentially the birthplace of the Jewish people. Where did the first temple of Solomon exist? The first great Jewish temple exist. It existed in Jerusalem. It was built about 800, 900 AD, BC. Right? Jerusalem was a Jewish city from the very beginning. So Israel is located exactly where it is supposed to be located. It's not Arabic land. It is Jewish land. It's the original Jewish homeland. So if it is your original homeland, why do Indians say that we want POK back? Because it is also our ancestral territory, our civilizational land, right? That's why we see, and why do Indians want Akhand Bharat, expanded territories of India across the subcontinent? Because it is our civilizational territory. It's always been our territory. So what's wrong with that? And therefore, what's wrong with Israel wanting to have a country where their homeland always existed? I see nothing wrong with that. Right? Ritvik says, reply to James, we have superior climate. Chennai is hot. Uti Kodaikanal is cold. All in Tamil Nadu. Rajasthan is hot desert, and also Mount Abu cold. West only has cold climate. Your opinions are. India, excuse me, just a second. Let me. All right. So, we have every climate you can imagine. So I agree with you. Yeah. If you go to the far north of India, you have frighteningly cold climate, essentially Arctic climate, extremely high altitudes, the Himalayas. We have desert climate in the Thar Desert, etc. We have archipelagos like the Andaman and Lakshadweep archipelagos. We have super hot, humid tropical climate down south, Chennai, Kerala, etc. Kerala, despite being down south, is a pretty nice, cool climate because of the backwaters and the forests and so on. Everything you can imagine, all kinds of terrain, everything we have it. Yeah, so we are kind of perhaps one of the only nations in the world that has every single climate, every single kind of terrain, etc. that's available. So yeah, we're lucky from that perspective. We certainly are. AVM says, why has ethanol blending become such a huge controversy when it allows for reduced reliance on oil imports and thus decreasing geostrategic vulnerabilities? I am not really sure. I have not studied ethanol blending. What are the pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages? What I seem to hear is that maybe it decreases the mileage of vehicles. Maybe I'm not sure if it's true. This is what I'm hearing. Okay, I'm not saying it's this is the fact. I'm hearing people complaining. And what are they complaining about? Maybe that ethanol blending is potentially lowering the mileage of vehicles. That's one complaint I'm hearing. Another complaint I'm hearing is that maybe it decreases the lifespan of engines and components, perhaps. That's what I'm hearing. I personally have not studied this issue in any sort of detail. I've not even started studying the issue because see, so I look at geopolitics. I'm not looking at internal matters in India. So I'm not sure. Maybe it's a it's a real thing. Maybe it's a politically induced controversy. Perhaps this, perhaps that, perhaps a mixture of two things. I have no idea. Right? Certainly, it will allow for reduced reliance on oil imports. Certainly, it will allow that. But if it has those other drawbacks, then people potentially could be unhappy with that. So what the truth is, I am not quite sure. I have not looked into this matter. Ideally, we need to find our own oil within our own territories, and that should be the end of the whole matter. Sushant Bharadwaj is a new member. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your support. Okay, Sushant Bharadwaj says, stay hydrated, sir, you precious. Thank you so much. Let me hydrate a little more. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Taking good advice. Thank you very much. Kunal Krish says, both sides' army officials are giving cryptic messages that Operation Sindoor 2.0 will begin soon. How will the sovereign nation react this time? US, China, Russia? Look, it's possible that something may happen soon. These cryptic messages and all this talk, words, I don't care about. But it looks like, based on how things are moving, the Afghanistan situation, the India-Taliban relationship, and various other factors, it looks like there could be a resumption of hostilities between India and Pakistan, the US support for Pakistan, and various other factors. It looks like it could happen. What will the other sovereign nations, what will their reaction be like? The US, Russia, and China. it depends on how if there is a war. First of all, it all depends on how the war goes. The US will support Pakistan, but if the war drags on for like 6 weeks, then everybody will want to interfere in some way in the war. And the longer the war goes, the more harmful it is for India, essentially. So if a war happens, we have to end it in 24 to 72 hours. Achieve your military and political objectives in that time frame. Don't let the war drag on for days and days and days and weeks, right? You don't want a Ukraine-like situation, which will increase the likelihood of something catastrophic happening on both sides. And if there's a war, I think the US will take the side of the Pakistanis very openly. The Chinese will try to stay neutral, and they will request both sides to go to the negotiating table, and Russia will make similar statements. But Russia will be on India's side to a larger extent than being neutral. The Chinese will remain neutral, and the US will be openly in support of Pakistan. RPPL says YouTube and the GPT with competitive market education says better PVT. YouTube and GPT with competitive market education. Competitive education system better. I'm assuming you're saying that YouTube and ChatGPT or AI will create a better education system. Is that what you're saying? Better than private system? You seem to be saying something like that, but it's very cryptic and very... Okay. All right, sir. Okay. Gigi at India says, do you think all Biharis who are in power, bureaucrats, looted India? We have the most corrupt system. Have you never? No, I haven't. No. I am not going to go and down this regional level and start blaming various regions and various states. We need to rise above these things, please. Okay, this is the problem in India, that we keep on pointing fingers at each other. If the system is allegedly corrupt, it is not because of one state or another state. Let's please rise above this petty mindset, please. Okay, so yeah. Shivansh says many federal level leaders have meetings with the XYZ authorities in the West. Is it not dangerous for India, given that they are already planning to balkanize India? Can the center not put constraints? That's one of the problems in India. You see, the states have too much power. The states have too much autonomy. The center is relatively pretty weak compared to a nation like China. In China, no official in a province, no provincial official. In India, we have states. In China, we have provinces. Same thing. In China, no provincial official will dare to meet with any foreign official without the explicit approval of the central leadership. In India, everything goes. It's a very big problem in India. Very big problem in India. And that is how you play the game of subnational diplomacy, which is obviously geared towards potentially balkanizing India in the future, which is very desirable to the West. Can the center not put constraints? The center is all constitution, Samvidhan's constitution. We have to go by the constitution. Whatever the constitution says, we have to do. So then let's balkanize India, because the constitution will kind of allow that. The constitution doesn't recommend or allow balkanizing India, but it has created a system that's pretty weak, right? Big issue. Okay, Trupti Joshi says, should China have cooperated more with India, Russia, Iran? Their current move on allowing rare earths but not export to the US lost a lot of wasted potential. Should China have cooperated more with India, Russia, Iran? Look, China seeks to be... What has China desired all this time? In the late 70s, the Chinese gradually started opening up their market to the US and to the West. In the 80s, this progressed. By the 1990s, the Chinese became the major manufacturer of whatever was being, whatever manufacturing the West needed. In the early 2000s, if you went to the US, everything was made in China. So the Chinese economy really grew exponentially to some extent because of this, and they became a major power. And the Chinese have always had this great ambition. The ambition is what Xi Jinping calls the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. The ambition is that they want to replace and displace the US as the most powerful nation by about 2050. That's the objective. And ever since Mr. Xi Jinping came to power, they have been pretty confrontational with the West and other countries. And the Chinese have always regarded India as a nation that needs to be balkanized. They've always regarded Iran as a nation to be utilized, nation to be used. And that's why they have this 25-year strategic deal with Iran, in which the Iranians will supply China with huge quantities of very discounted oil, and China will help Iran with various investments and so on. And the Chinese have regarded Russia as an adversary. Right now, there is a period of time where they are kind of cooperating to some extent, but the two nations are natural adversaries. So China is by nature, the Chinese Communist Party by nature is this hegemonic entity. They essentially want to rule the whole world, and they don't see that, they don't believe that they need to cooperate with nations. They believe that they need to either use nations or super pressurize nations or destroy nations. And that's why they have territorial disputes with almost all their neighbors, including with Russia. Well, technically, the dispute with Russia was ended through an agreement in the early 2000s, but the Chinese are now reopening those territorial disputes. They want more Russian territory. So the Chinese have always played this game. They don't want to cooperate with anyone. Clearly wasted potential. Instead of being the way they are, if they had started to cooperate with all their neighbors, it would have been a much nicer, part of the world, Eurasia. But clearly they don't believe that they should behave in that manner. So clearly a lot of wasted potential. Their current move on allowing rare earths but not export to the US, because see what they are doing, this move about rare earths or restricting the exports of rare earths to the US, it's in retaliation to the US tariffs and the US restrictions on semiconductors and chips to China, exports to China. So it's kind of a tit for tat move, and the Americans have walked into this trap. The Americans have outsourced all their rare earths manufacturing and all that to China. They've been importing all of their rare earths from China, and they have neglected developing those industries of extracting and purifying rare earths in the US, and that's why they are paying the price for that. The Chinese are simply, utilizing whatever leverage they have over the US. So I don't blame them for that. So that overall is the kind of nation China is. So right now, India and China will kind of lower the tensions, but the Chinese will steadfastly refuse to demarcate the India-Tibet border. So the Chinese are the aggressors in all these territorial disputes. That's the issue with China. It's a fundamental problem with the Chinese Communist Party and its leadership. Satellite says, warm lights or white lights or kotha lights? I have no idea what that is. What is a kotha light? I don't know what a kotha light is. Warm lights, white lights, depends on the situation. If you want to focus, if you want to study, if you want to do research, I would say bright white lights. That keeps you awake, that keeps you focused. Warm lights, if you want to relax, if you want to listen to music, if you want to spend a couple of hours reading before you go to bed, warm lights, right? And kotha lights, I have no idea what that is. So, and that's not geopolitics. Why did I take it? Ritvik says we have cold places like Ladakh, Uti, Manali, Shimla. We have Great Tawang, Cherrapunji, Shillong. We have hot places like Jaisalmer, Run of Kutch, islands like Andaman. Why are we not a tourism superpower? That's my question. Why are we not? What is the Ministry of Tourism doing? It's now what the Ministry of Tourism and Culture. Why are we not a cultural superpower? What is that ministry doing? It's so difficult to reach certain parts of India. If you are a foreign tourist, you should, if foreign tourists come to your country, you should roll out the red carpet for them. You should give them the best possible experience. Tourists aren't treated like that in India. Some various officials, they treat tourists like a nuisance. Tourists also have to pay these so-called fines, or the tourists have to see their drivers, etc., pay so-called fines to various members of the Indian system, essentially bribes, allegedly. I mean, it's such a low hanging fruit. The core issue once again is the alleged corruption. It's so unfortunate. We should be a tourism superpower, but we're not. It's like the government doesn't care at all. Just like they don't care about the education system, they don't care about tourism. They don't care. Slogans is all we do. Slogan, slogan, slogan. Incredible India. We coined a slogan. End of story. Ho gaya. What? What beyond? Nothing beyond that, really. Kavya says, is the judiciary slowing down the progress of India? No comments. I discussed geopolitics. Okay. Sorry, but I can't take this question. Project Smiling Buddha says, Putin going to Hungary. Meet with Zelensky? Probably. We'll see. Trump has again started saying things about stopping this war. How do you assess the situation? Trump can't force Putin to do a thing. If Putin decides that it's worthwhile meeting with Zelensky, he may do that. Trump has been saying things about stopping this war since before he became president, second time. He was claiming he would end the war on day one of his presidency. He is super frustrated. This is a huge failure by him. That's why he's trying to start other wars and stop them. How do I assess the situation? The way I assess the situation is this. This war will end on Russia's terms. This war will end on terms that are acceptable to Russia. It will not end on terms that are unacceptable to Russia. Whatever Putin desires and seeks as the end state of the war is what will be achieved by him before he ends the war. If it is achieved through talking with Zelensky, he will take that route. If it is achieved by talking with Trump, he will take that route. If it is achieved by another 3 years of grinding warfare, he will take that route. Whatever happens, this war will end on Putin's terms, on Russia's terms. That's how I assess the situation. And Russia is winning the war, by the way. The West is not. Ukraine is not. Please understand that. I mean, in 2002, I was saying Russia will win the war. In 2003, I was saying Russia is in the ascendancy. Russia is doing better than Ukraine in the war. And the comments I used to get. What's happening now? I have been saying since day one, the war will end on Russia's terms. And I am still saying that today. Now at least nobody is making fun. Nobody is taunting in the comments. What are you talking about? What are you smoking or whatever? Yeah, really? People swallow this propaganda. The West was saying that Bakhmut, Ukraine is winning. And when Bakhmut was about to fall, they were saying, why is Russia focusing on Bakhmut, this irrelevant little town? For the longest time, they were focusing themselves on Bakhmut. Then they were saying Putin is dying of cancer. He's got 3 months to live. They were saying in 2022. What happened? Please stop swallowing propaganda. Please think critically. That's what I would say. So the way I see it, the war will end on Russia's terms, whatever is what the Russians assess to be what they want, what the outcome that they desire out of this war. Animish says, thank you for helping us evolve and become a better version of ourselves. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. And yeah, that's all I seek to do. That's all I seek to do. Nothing else. Thank you. Anand says, why can't the government ban pan or gutka in India? They are building infrastructure, but some people are making it look bad by spitting pan, gutka. As per you, what is going wrong here? I think that, look, similarly, they can also ban alcohol. They can also ban tobacco, cigarettes, and whatnot. But they don't. I think the thing is that, in any society, you have to allow people to do some vices, some things that are not good. And you can tax them. And you can tax those things heavily. I know pan, gutka, people end up spitting all over the place, and that's disgusting. But I think a lot of people consume that horrible thing. And if you ban it, then you will lose votes, I suppose. So maybe that's the reason why. I don't know what the reason is. In every country they allow all these products, but in India you have this terrible thing of pan and gutka. So the only reason I can imagine is that if you ban this, then lots of people will vote against you. That's what I imagine. I think it looks like a lot of people are consumers of this disgusting thing. My perspective, disgusting. Maybe for some people, it's great. It's your choice. So that's possibly the reason why the government is not doing it, and they're potentially earning big revenues from that by taxing that. I think the taxes on these sin products are pretty high, right? Whether it is alcohol or tobacco or pan gutka, whatever, the taxes are pretty steep. So yeah, win-win potentially for the government. All right, I think we are done with the questions. I think I've covered all the super chats, so I can now end this stream here. Okay. So what is this? Gutka and cigarette should be banned. I suppose if it's bad for society, if it's bad for people's health, I'm sure lots of people want to quit these products, but they can't because they're addicted. So if you ban it, I think at least some will be happy. Celebrities promote them, says Lavanya. That's true. Yeah, a lot of money in this, isn't it? Yeah. Tobacco industry pays heavy taxes. That's why, yeah, that's one reason, right? Big, steep taxes. Ayush says, okay, let's make this the last question for today. Ayush says, on the surface, it seems like the Taliban is a vassal of the US. What's the case? Can't India take the base which US wants? As Taliban is more trustful to us, at least on the surface. My thoughts. Okay. Look, the Taliban was handed power by the US. The Taliban came back to power in Afghanistan because the Americans gave them Afghanistan back. The US wanted to leave Afghanistan. So they made a secret deal with the Taliban, the Doha Accord, which has some secret clauses. And it has been alleged very strongly by various very reputable people that the US has been paying the Taliban a weekly stipend between $30 to $100 million in cash. Okay. So that would be in exchange for certain services that the Taliban would render for the US, like keeping China out of Afghanistan and so on. So that was the accord. Those were the terms of the accord, I imagine. Okay, secret terms. Now the Americans want things that were not agreed upon. They want Bagram. In the Doha Accord, I can promise you there was no deal about Bagram, that the Taliban has to give Bagram to America. Now the Americans are demanding things like that. So the Taliban will say, no, absolutely not. We will honor the accord that we had. We will agree. We have agreed to certain terms. We are taking your money. So we'll make sure that we will not allow China to come into Afghanistan and use our territory for whatever they want to do. All those things we will do as per the agreement. But you can't make extra demands. So Taliban isn't a vassal of the US. They have an agreement with the US, which a sovereign nation can have. Okay. Why can't India take the base? Well, that's I think Taliban doesn't want any foreign military in the country, and I think we should respect that. Okay, that's how I see it. It looks like there are a couple more super chats. Okay, Amisha is a new member. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ankita says, if we wish to see a Viksit Bharat, a drastic change in the system is sort of compulsory. There's no other choice. Yeah, you're right. Which domain would be a good starting point according to you? Judiciary, bureaucracy, education, or others? I would say that the starting point has to be to end corruption wherever it exists. It has to start with a war on corruption. Here's maybe a completely impractical solution. Let's do a thought experiment. I'm sure everybody understands to what extent corruption allegedly exists in the country. How much of public money is allegedly, hypothetically being diverted through corruption? Tremendous amounts, right? So how about the government unilaterally increases the salaries of all government employees 10 times? If you're receiving X, from next month you will receive 10x. But now if you get caught doing corruption, the penalty is extremely steep. That sort of thing. So maybe something like that could be done. I would say that the first thing that needs to happen, urgently, desperately needed, is a war on corruption. So that's what I would say. Whichever institution, whichever domain it exists in. I am sure there are some domains where there is no corruption. I'm sure. But wherever it exists, allegedly, this needs to happen. Without that, nothing is going to change in India. I would say that is the starting point. That is the right starting point. Okay. Thank you, Ankita ji. Always good to have your questions. Shivansh says, maybe not geopolitical, but since the region creates headlines, creates headlines, why have we failed to inhabit pundits or anyone else, for that matter, back in Kashmir? The government boasts revoking Article 370 as a success. Beats me. What is the point of revoking that article if there is no change on the ground? You change something on paper. Why haven't the native inhabitants of Kashmir why haven't they been resettled in their homeland? I don't know. I have no idea. I don't have an answer. And it's very disappointing. Okay, Kiran says, thank you for your effort, brother. Happy Diwali to you and audience. Thank you, Kiran ji. Thank you so much. Happy Diwali to you as well, and to your family and loved ones, and to the audience as well. Thank you very much. Prashant says, please explain the Peru situation, corruption plus tea. I'm not sure what's the situation. I haven't been paying attention to Peru. What happened there? If you ask me about Peru, I will talk about the Inca Empire. That's 500 years ago. And maybe that's the root cause of all the situation there. But I am not aware of what's happening right now. Let's quickly Google it. Peru situation. By the way, please stop taking super chats. I want to end the live stream now. It's like 2.5 hours. Peru, what's happening? Peru news. What's going on? Gen Z protest. Oh God, no. Gen Z protests. So the new version of the color revolution template is the Gen Z protests. Now put everything in the name of Gen Z. Looks like the Americans are trying a new regime change operation there for whatever reason. I'll check it out, but right now I don't have the details. All right. Ankita says, happy Diwali, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Happy Diwali to you as well, and to your loved ones. Thank you, ma'am. And the last question is by satellite arrogant KBC kid. Any comments? I have no idea. Which KBC kid? Arrogant kid. I am not aware of this. Sorry. I'm sure it's not geopolitical, so I won't be able to say. Okay, people, this is the end of today's session. Thank you, everybody, for all your questions, for your viewership. I always appreciate that. I'm very privileged to have you as my viewers, so thank you so much. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in next week's live streams. Thank you, everybody. Happy Diwali to everybody. Good day, Shubhratri. Good night, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye. Keep raising your standards as always. Bye-bye.